What's up, everybody? Here with another episode of The Blitz. I am your host, Michael Barno. In today's rant, if you want to call it that, I will be discussing the big free agents still available, why I think they haven't been signed, and where I think they're going to ultimately end up. This first guy is the biggest one out there, I think, and really he's the most intriguing story of the offseason, at least of the free agents who still need to be signed. This guy represents the most intrigue to me just because has the most potential to become a big signing. And that guy, of course, is Cam Newton, who has still not been signed in the NFL. But I don't understand why this hasn't happened yet. To me, the destination is so clear. It ought to be criminal. Vegas is probably not taking bets on it anymore because it's so obvious where Cam's got to go. Cam Newton will be a Los Angeles Charger next year. That is something that I think there's no way to avoid. If you look at the landscape of the NFL, it is the only destination left that makes sense. Because Newton is not a guy who wants to sit around and be a backup in the NFL. Especially at his age and how much he's been through, the kind of player we know he's capable of being when he's healthy. He's a proven dynamic playmaker in the NFL. And really, the question is, can he return to form? The Panthers don't think so, and that's why they released him, which I can't say I blame them. 2 seasons in a row, the whole thing has gone tits up because of his health. And due to the way he plays, that is always an issue, something that team has to worry about. When your quarterback makes a lot of his money running the ball and taking hits the way Newton does as a third running back in the backfield back there, I think it has to be said that it's always on the front of the organization's mind that guy could get hurt. And with Cam Newton, that is ultimately what the risk factor is. There's also the fact that he hasn't looked like that great player in a couple of years now. First half of 2018, actually, Newton had a good season. And then the injury happened, and it got to a point he could barely throw a ball 10 yards toward the end of the season. And they should never have been playing him at that time. Even if he is Cam Newton, with how he looked in that game, there's just no way that he should have been playing with that arm. Now, I don't know that he's going to end up. Now, I know for a fact that the only place left. If you look around the league, what do the Broncos have? Broncos have Drew Lock in place. He's going to be the guy this year for them. Pat Mahomes in Kansas City. You have Derek Carr at the Raiders. The Raiders have committed to Carr now. All the Brady talk is over, but that is Carr's team. And then you stumble onto the Chargers, and who's the guy? Tyrod Taylor. Now, everybody on the planet knows that Taylor is not a long-term franchise guy. Everybody knows that. The question really is, are the Chargers going to do what I think the obvious move is and take a low-risk, high-potential? This is the kind of move that you've got to take if you're the Chargers. Cam Newton is not a guy who is going to turn the ball over very much. He is the type of guy that can make that team a contender this year. If Newton is able to come back and look even similar to what he used to, that team is a contender right now. With Tyrod Taylor, they could even ride that defense and play low-risk ball on offense and even make the playoffs, possibly. But for a fact you're not getting to a Super Bowl with him. And with Newton, it's possible with that defense, and if he limits his turnovers and he just plays like he used to, and the Chargers get the player that was around up until the middle of 2018, this is potentially the biggest move of the offseason. So Cam Newton to the Chargers has to happen. It has to happen on both sides. For Newton, it's the only place left that truly makes sense. And for the Chargers, he's the only quarterback out there that you could still get in free agency, even though the Chargers have said they don't want a free agent quarterback. He's the only one left that they could get who will make them a contender right now, potentially. The Chargers have to make this move. And quite honestly, I'm shocked it hasn't happened yet. So, that's my first prediction. I believe Newton will be a Charger next season. I don't think there's any way he goes somewhere else. There's nowhere else that's going to say you're the man. Every other team has already committed to their quarterback. So, Cam Newton will be a Charger. The next guy on the list that is surprising he hasn't signed yet, but not surprising when you really think about how much he wants and how much he thinks he's worth versus what he's really worth. And that guy is Jadeveon Clowney. Clowney's career to this point, I see it as a mixed bag. When he's been healthy and playing, he has been a pretty solid football player in the league. And he's even been a game changer at times. If you go watch his game against the 49ers this year, at San Francisco's house, Clowney tore that line apart. It wasn't even close. And he was one of the reasons the Seahawks won that game, Jadeveon Clowney. So when he's been healthy, Clowney has been a terror. Unfortunately, we have to mention the caveat in that sentence, when he's healthy. It's been the knock on him since his first year. The guy has been injury prone. He hasn't played a lot. Last season with the Seahawks, he played a lot of the year injured with his groin. And it was an injury that they said, well, it won't heal till the season's over, so it couldn't improve. And so he played, when he was on the field for the Seahawks, he was operating at about 75% most of the time he was out there. Still made a little bit of a difference, but he's not 100% and he's not a game changer. He failed to make game-changing plays, and that is just the reality. I can't say where I think Clowney's going to go. I think a team that could use him, the type of team that needs a Clowney, honestly, I think the Patriots could give him a call. If you look back to last season, the Patriots' defense was a great pass rusher away from elite status. Truly elite and possibly all-time great status on defense. When you watch film on the Patriots last year, that was the missing link. They've got the secondary to shut down anybody. They've got a great linebacking core. Flawed, but it's still great. Great linebacking core. Defensive line's not bad. Interior defensive line isn't bad. They're not special, but they're not bad. And then you look at the edge. The only guy I could even think of was Chase Winovich, who failed to deliver the pass rush in his rookie season anyway, that I think many in the Patriots organization thought he was capable of delivering. And he did not deliver that. And as a result, the Patriots defense was kept out of all-time great status. And this was the biggest hole in that defense and the biggest reason why the defense ultimately was not capable of carrying that team the way a truly great defense can. You think of the 2015 Denver Broncos. The offense they had that year with Peyton Manning, with that noodle arm he had in that last season, that offense wasn't explosive. But that defense was all-time great. It was great at every spot, and that is why that defense could carry its team to a Super Bowl. The Patriots tried to use the same formula toward the end of last season. The problem is the defense is not that good. It was very good. It was not all-time great good. It was not, we can win a Super Bowl by ourselves good. So if I'm the Patriots, I'm giving Clowney a long, hard look. Now, granted, it can also be said that the Patriots are clearly in rebuild mode post Tom Brady. They dumped a lot of defensive personnel. And Jarrett Stidham is in line to start next season. But if I'm the Patriots, I think you might want to give Clowney a shot to address what is a need on that team. And so if I'm looking at the teams around the league, the team that where it sticks out the most that, wow, these guys could use a potential game changer like Clowney, I think the Patriots are the team that sticks out the most. But really, it's any team out there that's looking for a pass rusher. The first team that pops to mind for me is the Patriots, because it was so blatant that was the biggest problem they had last year on defense, was they could not get to the quarterback effectively. So, Clowney, I believe the best spot for him would be in New England, playing for a coach who has been known to give one-time great or somewhat troubled players a chance on his team with Bill Belichick. So, I see Clowney potentially in a Patriots uniform next year. The last guy on this list, and really he's the biggest wild card, and that is Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is such a strange case to me. I think that the biggest thing about Winston that stands out is his decision-making, obviously, is so terrible. But if you take out the decision-making aspect, he is a very talented quarterback. He's got a gun. He's got a gunslinger attitude. And I think that there are many aspects to Jameis that just would really tempt me if I'm a team like the Patriots, who currently are talking about Stidham being the guy. But you potentially, again, I see a lot of issues with Winston going forward, and I don't know who's going to want to sign him. The Chargers aren't interested in him because he's too mistake-prone for them. It's obvious that the Chargers have tipped their hand for this season that they are going to win with defense and a low-risk offense that takes advantage of its opportunities where it gets them. That is the Chargers' blueprint for success in 2020. And that's the biggest. That is their way to win. Unfortunately for Winston, he doesn't fit into that. Winston doesn't fit what the Chargers want to do this year. So it doesn't make sense from that aspect. I've heard and seen some people saying, well, why don't the Chargers take a chance on Winston when they've got an obvious second-rate guy there in Tyrod Taylor? Well, because Taylor actually fits what the Chargers want to do this season anyway better. And also because the Chargers, I think, are 100% committed to drafting a quarterback in this year's NFL draft, which will be conducted in backyards and garages, from what I'm told, so that we can make sure that the general managers and the personnel guys don't get COVID-19. But for Winston, it's hard to say who is going to take a chance on a guy like that. You look at Chicago. Well, they brought in Nick Foles. Foles has a history with Matt Nagy. Foles potentially has a future in the NFL, but the Bears have their guy. They signed their free agent quarterback. They're not picking up Winston. You look at other teams in the league. You look at the AFC North. You know, the Bengals. It's all but assured. The fact that the Bengals haven't tried to sign anybody and are going to release Andy Dalton is all but signaling they're taking Joe Burrow number one. And it will be Joe Burrow. It's not going to be Tua. It's going to be Joe Burrow. So he's not going to be a Bengal. He's not going to be a Steeler. Why would the Steelers take him? They've got Big Ben. And Winston doesn't strike me as a guy who is going to fit the Steelers organization that well. That organization up there is all about stability. Winston is not stable. No, not mentally unstable, but he's not stable. He's erratic as a passer. That's why the Bucs did not commit to him ultimately. That's why they didn't re-sign him. That's why Brady is now a Buccaneer. Because Winston's erratic play forced them to make that decision. They drafted him, and they gave him 4 years. Or correction, 5 years I think it is. To get the ship turned around there in Tampa Bay, if you'll pardon the pun. And it didn't happen. So he hits the road. And the Buccaneers know that they're ready to compete right now if they just get smart play out of the quarterback. Enter this best, smartest, greatest quarterback of all time. Well, smartest, that's debatable. That probably goes to Peyton, or at least it's a tie. But definitely the best quarterback of all time, even in his old age right now. Tom Brady goes down to the Buccaneers. Bucs are now a Super Bowl contender because that roster is loaded outside of the quarterback. If you look at the defensive personnel, it's much better than people think. The pass defense was bad. They have to shore that up. They got to get that corrected, but they stop the run better than anyone in the NFL. If they get the pass defense shored up, the receiving core is arguably the best in the league. O.J. Howard will be on everyone's fantasy draft board next year because Tom Brady loves to throw to his tight ends, and O.J. Howard is one of the most athletic tight ends in the NFL. He is a huge season waiting to happen. And now Brady's there, I think he's going to have a monster year. So, but to return to the point of Jameis Winston, his erratic play is what got him out of Tampa Bay. And as we look around the league, I just don't see an organization that is not set at quarterback or is willing to bring in a guy so careless with the football. The 30-30 club, I don't think anyone's ever been in it. I think he's the only one. So much good and so much bad wrapped up in one player. If you continue on that list, the Ravens have Lamar Jackson, and they're not interested in Jameis, obviously. Everywhere you look, teams are set at quarterback. So I don't know where Jameis wants to sign. Wherever he goes, he's going to have to compete with a franchise starter or a guy who that organization sees as the franchise starter for years to come. That is what he will be up against. Now, a team that I think could make some sense is yet again the Patriots. The Patriots aren't set at quarterback. I'm not convinced at all they think Stidham's the guy. I think they know as well as anyone that this time next year, they'll be drafting a quarterback. So the Patriots make some sense. The Chargers don't, despite, if you look at it, you would think they do because their quarterback's not great. But again, Taylor fits what they do better than Winston does. And again, everywhere you look, teams are set. So wherever Winston's going to go, he will likely have to compete with a franchise starter at the position. Now, I'm going to move on to a bold prediction, and this pod has been pretty Patriots centered, I would say. But the team that I think, and I believe this 100%. You look at their roster, you look at their situation. I think that the Patriots next season will have their first losing year under Bill Belichick. I don't see how they don't. You look at the tight ends. They failed to effectively replace Gronkowski last year. They tried to replace him by rebuilding him. They tried to use Ryan Izzo as a blocker, and they signed multiple guys off the street to try them as blockers. They all failed. Couldn't cut the mustard. at that spot. And then the fullback, Devlin, gets hurt. I think that you're going to see the Patriots return to a ground and pound style offense and try to use Devlin a lot. And Michelle, potentially, James White. But I think you'll see the Patriots trying to run the football more next year. But in order to do that, they got to find a tight end. Right now, I don't see one. They need the offensive line to play better than it did a year ago. Sony Michel is the key runner in that backfield with Burkhead. James White has always been primarily a receiving back. He can run too, but he's not a dot the I back. James White is not. He is not a run downhill, get hard yards guy. Sony Michel, as we saw last year, is only good if he's got the block set up perfect. He's a quick player. He is a gifted runner if he has space. But the problem when they lost Gronkowski and Devlin is he no longer has space. And you saw what happened. He's not a guy who gets tough yards, not a tough runner. He can't play in a phone booth. He can't play in a closet effectively against a defense. He's not a Derrick Henry or a Mark Ingram, a guy who can make 2 yards when nothing is there. Should have been no yards, he can make 2. He can turn 2 into 4. That's what those tough yards guys can do. But Sony Michel is not that guy. So the Patriots have to find the personnel and the tight end ultimately to block for them on offense in that run game, because they're not going to be able to drop back and air the ball out with Stidham. I can promise you that's not the game plan. So they're going to have to find the personnel to run the ball effectively and help Stidham out. And I don't see it happening right now. Defensively, they will not be what they were last year. They've lost too much. They lost some of those guys in the secondary. They got rid of Collins in the linebacking core. Van Noy's gone. The defense is in rebuilding mode. They still haven't proven they have an elite pass rusher, as I mentioned earlier in the show, on the defense, and it's going to be a tough year. I'm predicting hard times in New England in 2020, really hard times. So hard, in fact, I think they will go 7-9. They will have a losing record in 2020, and they'll be drafting a quarterback in next year's April draft, barring the coronavirus, barring another outbreak of coronavirus, I guess. So that's basically where we're at. Now, before I end this show, I'm going to go on a brief rant about this COVID-19, this coronavirus that's going around. To people that are saying they can't stay indoors, or to people saying, just going around living their lives as if nothing is wrong, everything is the same as it always was, they're not asking much of us. They're telling everyone to stay indoors, stay home. It's that simple. That's all we have to do. Stay home, gut check in April, and by the end of this month, we could possibly have this thing licked if everyone would just cooperate and everybody do it. There's never been a time in history where it's been easier for people to quarantine themselves. There are endless ways to entertain yourself in your own home. 15 years of innovation in live streaming services and the internet, video games, and everything else has made it so your home is basically an entertainment center. You can literally pull up a Netflix, Hulu, take your pick of endless streaming services. YouTube sells any movie you can think of, any movie you've ever wanted. You can get it. You can rent it for $3, and boom, you can have any movie you want. We have countless video games. We were made to entertain ourselves. If ever there was a generation where we should be doing this, or they've made it easy for us to quarantine ourselves, it's this one. If there's ever been a generation that knows how to entertain itself, it's this one. We have games on our phones that turn us into zombies for hours on end. This should be the easiest thing ever. Become a zombie for the next month. Because when you hear the stories about this thing, it is no joke. For some people, it's mild, but there are stories, and you can go read them in the New York Times, Washington Post, or any other publication you want to. People are dying without getting to see their loved ones. People are dying alone, and the medical staff won't even deal with them because it's that contagious and it's that potentially lethal. And people are hospitalized for weeks on end trying to beat this thing. So that is why we're trying to stop people from getting infected. That is why they're telling you to stay home. If you ever need a reminder, go check these stories out. They're not fun to read and they're not easy to listen to. But it's why we have to do what we're doing. It's why we all have to cooperate and stay home for the sake of ourselves, our loved ones, our communities, our friends, and mankind generally. So that's the message. To end this pod, that is the message. Sorry we're ending it with a non-football related thing, but I had to say my piece about this thing. Entertain yourself at home. Keep yourself locked up. Well, this whole thing will blow over and we'll get back to normal before the summer. You want a normal summer? Do things right now. You don't do things right now, we'll be doing this. We'll be doing the whole thing. We'll be dealing with this damn coronavirus into the summer if we don't get everyone on the same page. So make your pick. You want your summer when you actually want it, when it's warm outside and it's nice and we can go to the beach, you can do everything else. Do you want it then? Or do you want to deal with this thing now? If you want to have a regular summer, you will do the hard time now. So without any further ado, that has been this episode of The Blitz. As always, I'm your host, Michael Barneau, and I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. Stay home, and we'll see you soon.